All right. Today we have Dr. Christian E. Vazquez. On this episode, we dive into a conversation regarding Hispanic Heritage Month, the importance of culture, identity, and health factors within Latino populations. Joining us for this episode is Dr. Christian E. Vazquez, a new assistant professor in the School of Social Work. Dr. Vazquez recently earned his PhD in the School of Social Work from the University of Texas at Austin. While at UT Austin, he received several research and fellowship awards. He earned a Master of Social Work degree from the University of Michigan and a Bachelor of Arts degree in Sociology from the University of California at Santa Barbara. Dr. Vazquez is a former child welfare worker in California and now researches childhood obesity and health disparities, particularly among Latino children. Dr. Vazquez, first off, thank you for joining us here today. We really appreciate you giving us your time for this important discussion. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. I'm happy to be here. The weather's starting to cool down a little bit, so I'm happy about that. This is my first, I've been in Texas, like I said, at UT for 4 years, but this is my first couple months in Dallas, so I'm still getting a little settled, but everything's going well so far.
Awesome. Do you mind sharing a little bit more about yourself, your interest, and your background?
Sure. So I'm from California originally. I actually went to UCLA for 2 year and then UC Santa Barbara for 2 years. And I played soccer in undergrad. And then after my undergrad, I worked as a child welfare worker for a county agency in Santa Barbara County for 2 years. I did that knowing that I wanted to go back to school. And I got into that really because in my senior year of my undergraduate degree, I did an internship with the county. And I really liked what I was doing there. It's a tough job, but you're really giving back to the community. And so while I liked doing that frontline work, I saw that there was more work to be done that could be done at a higher level. So that's why I want to return to school. From there, I went to University of Michigan, where I didn't know anybody, had never spent a lot of time in the snow, and I actually loved it. I loved Ann Arbor. The winter weather is not for me. At least I know that now. But I had a really good experience there, and I'm really happy that I made that decision. I made some great mentors, got some good training, and then for my PhD, I went straight through from the master's to the PhD. Some people take some time off in between to get their license, but I went straight through. And after being in Michigan, my criteria for where I wanted to do my PhD was, in the top 10 of my field, but anywhere where it doesn't snow really. And so luckily, there were two good schools that fit that criteria. It was UT Austin and UC Berkeley. And I got into both. And they tell you when you're going to do a PhD that you might want to go somewhere where you don't go somewhere where you might want to end up living, because schools don't typically hire their own students to be professors after. And so taking that in mind, at the time, I thought I wanted to go back to California. So I went to Austin, and then sure enough, I met my wife there, who's a Texan, and ended up staying in Texas anyways. So I'm really happy to be at UT Arlington. My wife grew up in Arlington, born and raised. She went to high school in Fort Worth and went to SMU. So we moved back, and we have great family and friends support here. So it's all been going really well. So,
well, we're glad to have you here in Texas. Do you still have any family in California that you go visit?
Yeah, I actually have a pretty big family. My dad is one of 13, and my mom's one of 6. And they're all in Santa Barbara, where I'm from. So they're all back there. All my grandparents were all born in Mexico. My dad was born in Mexico. He came over when he was like 15. My mom was born here in the States, but she's fluent Spanish speaker and everything. Mm-hmm. And then I have one older sister, and she's also in Santa Barbara. She's married with 3 kids. So we try to go back to see them, 2 or 3 times a year.
Awesome. Well, Dr. Vazquez, you mentioned you like being on the front line. I wanted to ask, what influenced you to pursue a career in social work and in academia?
Towards the end of my senior year, I got in touch with I was taking a class at UCSB, and The professor was also a Latino, and he kind of took me under his wing. And I started doing some research with him that was focused on Latino youth in high school, and seeing if they wanted to pursue college, and kind of how we were looking at how teachers talk to the Latino students about going to college and what was the way that they did it. And so I got involved with some research with him, and then he also encouraged me to do the internship with the county social service agency. And like I said, I started doing that work with the county, and I just fell in love with it. Just helping out families, especially with children. So that was kind of the social work aspect. I just, kind of fell into it. My parents don't have anything to do with social work. Both me and my sister, I don't know why we fell in. She's actually doing, she's 5 years older than me, but she's doing foster places. Awesome. She's a social worker back in California. And then in academia, yeah, I guess, I had never thought about doing a PhD, but I think that seeing that professor kind of took me under his wing, and he was somebody that looked like me, who came from a similar background, and he encouraged me to do a PhD. And nobody in my family had even done a master's at that point. My sister and I were first year generation students. And so just something, it appealed to me because it was something that was difficult, and it was a goal that I was going to go after. And so that's really how I got into, going after the PhD. And then, my research interests kind of changed multiple times, but they've kind of always been around health disparities with Latino populations.
Awesome. Thank you for that answer. For those of you that are unaware, Hispanic Heritage Month starts on September 15th and ends on October 15th every year. Dr. Vazquez, I wanted to ask, what does this month mean to you?
It means a lot. There's, especially as an academic, I was on the phone earlier today with another professor who's at University of Arkansas. And actually this whole month, also in September, I was reaching out to a lot of assistant professors all over the country, particularly that work with Latino populations. And, it's funny, it's kind of a cold call, cold email, but everybody that I speak to is so happy just to be speaking to another Latino that's working in this area, because really in academia, there aren't enough of us. There are not a ton of Latinos doing this work. There's actually, still less African-American as well, but there's more African-American PhDs than Latino PhDs. And so we still got a lot of work to do. And so this month represents a lot to me in terms of the work, kind of where we've gotten to at this point, and still the work that we have to do to kind of have more representation. And one of my favorite things about being in Dallas actually is, when we were moving to Dallas, I don't really know too much about Dallas when we were moving, and I didn't know if I was going to like it or not. I didn't really have any expectations, but I live in the Oak Cliff area of Dallas, and it's a pretty Hispanic area, and so there's tons of I'm Mexican. There's tons of Mexican food there. I go to my barber, they're playing reggaeton music. I go to my gym, and he has Latin music as well. So I actually love the culture and identity around the area and the neighborhood that I live in specifically. And I think what I've heard is that's there's a lot of pockets like that in the DFW area.
Absolutely. Fun fact, I actually went to school close to the South Dallas area by Oak Cliff, Paul Cram College. Yeah, no, Paul Cram College, it's another HBCU, a historically Black college university. I believe the only one in Dallas. And similar to you, I only had one Latino professor, Dr. Tinajero. He was all so focused, so big on culture, so big on identity. And one of my questions I wanted to ask you is, how important is culture to you?
It's super important. One of the things, I'll give you an example. One of the things that I hope that I pass on to my kids is the ability to speak Spanish. I'm fluent in Spanish. Luckily, I was kind of raised by my grandma while I was younger, just like 0 to 5. And so I picked up Spanish and I kept it and I kept working on it. And it was one of the things where, for example, like when I was in Michigan, I hardly spoke Spanish to anybody. And here, and even in Austin, really not a ton, but here I get a lot of opportunities to use it. But I've met a lot of Latinos, especially in Texas, that don't necessarily speak Spanish. And, for whatever reason, some people do, some people don't. Maybe they didn't have the opportunity to. But I really hope that I pass it on, because I think it's super important to continue that language, that legacy. And not only for my children, it'll be helpful as, the Hispanic population across the country continues to grow. And so my wife and I still, try to engage in as much Hispanic Latino opportunities as possible.
Yeah, I always thought it was funny. So a little bit about myself. I'm a Colombian and Guatemalan, and in my household, my mother and father only spoke to me in Spanish. All the novelas, everything was in Spanish, and like everything was just Spanish at home. But then whenever you leave outside home, then you got to kind of code switch, to English. And it was I definitely agree. Being able to not only have another language, but just being able to be fluent in that other language, so you can talk to, it almost opens up the variety of people you can speak with and have a conversation with. So I definitely agree. If you can learn 3 languages, it may be a little harder, but definitely go for it if you can. Yeah. So follow-up question, Dr. Vazquez, how important is identity to you? Not sure if you're familiar with this experience, but one of my experiences here, especially in Texas, again, knowing that I'm Colombian and Guatemalan, when people hear me speak Spanish, they automatically assume Mexican, or they automatically assume Spaniard.
Mm-hmm.
With that being said, how important is identity to you, and being able to specify, no, I am from X, Y, and Z?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, or excellent example that you brought up. And yeah, so when you hear somebody speaking Spanish, unless you're in maybe Florida, you're thinking that person's Mexican, right? And so since I am Mexican, I've never been on the other side of having to explain that. But I do understand that there's a wide spectrum of Latinos, and I think it's like what you just finished saying. I think it's awesome that I was just in a meeting the other day where we had a Dominican guy, it was me, another Venezuelan, and we were able to just go back and forth between English and Spanish without kind of skipping a beat. It didn't really. Somebody would say something in Spanish, then we'd start talking in Spanish, but we would still be on the same topic, right? And so identity for me, I think it's awesome to be part of the Latino community. But then on the other side of that, we're part of the broader national culture. I think that it's important for me to represent for the Latino community and show that part of why I push myself to get to this point, at the PhD level, is to show representation and kind of be there as a role model for other Latino youth who, even if they don't want to get their PhD, see somebody in a role in higher education or at a higher level. And so I always am looking to push young students, to go a little further than what they maybe even expect of themselves.
Absolutely. I like how you bring up the point of representation. I saw a graphic on the internet the other day, and it had, Happy Hispanic Heritage Month, and it had a Latina woman with a bucket and a mop, and it showed a Latino male with dirty clothes, like farmer's clothes. And it's kind of a stereotype. There's the cleaning lady is Latina, the guy working on your car is Latino, and I think it is important to have representation myself, because again, you don't see people with the faces that we have in these spaces. And I mean, you have a PhD now, I'm pretty sure your professor back in your day or your mentors kind of helped push you, towards to reach that status and that prestige of doctor.
Mhm.
I wanted to ask, how
Um,
important is representation to you?
Super important. Even just a small thing like, so one of my best friends in my program at UT Austin, he's a Black guy from Atlanta, but we share a lot of similar stories in terms of, how we're perceived in academia as a faculty of color. But just little things, for example, like I wanted to make sure that my website here at UTA was up and running kind of as soon as it could be. And I was staying on top of it because something that he and I talked about is that, let's say, for example, there's a student out there right now that's looking for a PhD program to go and apply to. And if they're looking, if they're a Latino student looking for Latino faculty to partner with or be mentored by, I want to make sure that they see that, hey, I'm here, if you want to come here, come here. So I think just something as small as that, it's super important for like we keep saying, for others just to see that we're here, you know what I mean? And so, I think that's just a good, funny story of how important just representation is, even at the smallest level.
Awesome. Thank you for that answer, Dr. Vazquez. Dr. Vazquez, your research interests are in health disparities, Latino populations, cardiovascular health, e-health, obesity, and socioeconomic status. I wanted to ask you about e-health. That really stood out to me. Could you share some insight on that?
Yeah, I'm glad that you're asking about that. That's kind of actually the new direction that I'm heading in. And so I'm starting, a new series of projects as I'm starting my new role here at UTA and kind of ending what I was doing at UT. And e-health is the new direction that I'm going in. And, COVID kind of made us aware that everything's moving online, whether we like it or not. As COVID had kind of made it almost a near requirement that you have to be able to use the internet to kind of engage with your healthcare system. It's unfortunate in some ways, but some ways maybe makes it easier to access, I guess. But what I'm starting to focus on with a collaborator at UT, a senior researcher, is focusing on older adults and specifically Latinos, and improving their digital literacy. So, from just anecdotally, Latinos use cell phones, they use WhatsApp a lot, but they might not be able to use the internet to, log into a portal or even receive a letter from their physician online and understand it. Or if it's not even if it's not in their language. So the area that I'm going into is trying to increase digital literacy, just some basic skills around how to understand navigating different healthcare systems online. And so I'm pretty excited about that area because, it's only been in the past 5 years that people have really been working in this area. And it's not with, specifically not with Latinos, a ton of work has been done. Some work has been done and there's some good people out there doing some good stuff. But I'm excited to get into that area.
Awesome answer, Dr. Vazquez. How important is overall health to you, both physical and mental?
I can't stress it enough. I have these conversations all the time where, you need to focus on your nutrition and, physical activity, even if it's just walking. And I think that, it's kind of this reciprocal cycle that physical, if you're feeling good physically, you're going to feel good mentally. And if you're feeling good mentally, you're going to feel good physically. But taking care of, what you're eating and just being some kind of physically active, I think is super important. And whenever I can, I talk about it all the time, not to be annoying to certain people when I first meet them, but, people don't realize how important it is and how important it is, not just short term, but long term. Specifically in all the research interests that I focus on, it's, I'm starting to really focus on chronic disease prevention. So prevention specifically, related to obesity and diabetes. And it really comes down to just really I mean, there's a lot of other factors, but if you can try to eat well and be physically active, you can, cut down a lot of problems that you might have in the future.
Absolutely. I know on my end, as a Latino that grew up in a traditional household, there was no such thing as a diet, at the dinner table. And tying back to the cultural aspect, in Colombia, we have arepas. My mom, they got pupusas. There's actually, I had to learn this a while ago, from Mexican to Guatemalan to even Salvadorian, there's different styles of making tamales, so, there's a lot of great food. Like my mouth is just watering just remembering it. But I wanted to ask, with these foods, how can we promote health and healthier habits in these traditional foods and Latin culture that Latin culture consumes?
Yeah, so there's a ton of work being done around this, and it's difficult, right, for a lot of reasons. I mean, just not related to the diet per se, but I still go home right now, and my grandma on my mom's side is still alive. Well, both of my grandmas are still alive, but I go eat at my mom's house, and I'm not underweight, but she'll look at me and she'll be like, "You need to put on some weight. You need to eat more." And I'm just like, that's kind of how I grew up, and that's still how she is, from now on. So that's a cultural thing that we got to work on as well. There's eating, and that's a tough one because she's moms and grandmothers, they show love through their cooking, right? So it's hard to turn down seconds. You don't want to offend them. So that's some of those cultural things are tough to get around. But yeah, in terms of the diet and nutrition, so I work with a lot of folks that are doing interventions, and it's really trying to. It's a lot easier. For example, one intervention that I'm working on right now, we work with groups of 15 adult Latinos, and we try to see like what their current meals are, and then try to find small ways to adapt them. And we don't say, never eat any of these foods, right? But it's just trying to find ways to incorporate, maybe some more vegetables, or maybe eat this without the tortilla, every day, or, whatever it is where we can cut back on some of those heavier foods that you might be having daily. But yeah, I mean, I was the same way, there was what I thought was healthy back in the day is not what I think is healthy now. And it is, one of the hard parts with that intervention that I was telling you about, it's easy. You can go, there's they call it the 5 questions that you ask, and there you can ask, is it better to drink a soda or drink water? People will tell you it's healthier to drink water, or people will you can ask, is it better to eat a salad or is it better to eat, this quesadilla? People will tell you they know what the right answer is, but it's just having to help them figure out how to incorporate that in their meals. And, there's a ton of, income, grocery store, if you have access to fresh food. And there's a lot of barriers that, researchers that are working in this area try to address in their interventions. But it's a lot of factors to take into, for sure.
Yeah, I remember the last little carne asada I went to, everything just looks so good and well cooked and well prepared. But, I'm leaning more towards leaving pork, leaving the salchichas, the ribs, all that stuff. I'm leaning to, I would like to instill a healthier eating, habit myself, but some of that, man, there's no other cooking like mom's cooking. I'll leave it at that. No other cooking like mom's cooking.
I mean, it's true. It's hard because I think it would be a lot harder if I was living back home to eat as healthy as often as I do now. So I think definitely if you live around your family, Latino family, and you're, at their house eating all the time, I think it is hard because realistically, you're not going to tell your grandmother, to start cooking in a different way. That's what she's going to make. You're not going to change it. And it's really, so I do try to focus on, when we focus on the children, and parents who are kind of maybe later generation or still kind of early parents, thinking about how to incorporate both. You want to stay true to your traditions and your culture, but also realizing that we Hispanics have the highest, Latinos have the highest diabetes prevalence in the country now. And so that's just a reality that we need to take into account when we're thinking about that type of
Awesome.
stuff.
Thank you for that answer, Dr. Vazquez. An issue gaining visibility in Hispanic and Latino communities is the recognizing or lack thereof with Afro-Latinos and Hispanics with African heritage backgrounds. There are many US citizens that are Black and African American and Hispanic. My question to you, Dr. Vazquez, do you see any differences in your research approach for this community of Afro-Hispanics and Afro-Latinos that are often overlooked?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a great question. Such a great question. I think that it's hard to, we need to do better in the research community. We need to do better in terms of looking at, Afro-Latino differences within the Latino population. Part of that is, I think with especially large data sets, they're not even asking those questions, and it's hard to even get a sample. It's not impossible. Like I said, they're definitely out there, that data, but what researchers can be doing is at least be thinking about how outcomes might be different by Afro-Latino populations. And I know at least people are thinking about it, because another project that I'm a part of down in Corpus, you're doing survey research, and we are including the question about, it's not just, are you Hispanic, Latino, yes or no? It's, are you Hispanic, Latino, yes or no? If yes, are you Afro-Latino, Indigenous Latino, different levels. And so I think that's great that that's even being included and thought of now. But we can definitely do a better job even doing those analyses when we have them. I can tell you, I've done studies with looking at differences by, foreign born and US born, and like the Mexican population basically versus all else. That's mostly just like a sampling thing, because again, we don't collect oversample. We typically have a lot of Mexicans in the sample, but not as much as everybody else, depending on what part of the country you're collecting data in. But I think that's something that we definitely need to do a better job of.
Thank you for that answer. Dr. Vazquez, are there different health disparities, culture, and other issues in this community compared to larger Hispanic community and Black and African American community that may impact or influence your research?
Yeah, I think that they being the Afro-Latino community are disproportionately affected by a lot of the health disparities that Black, African Americans, and the Latino community are, because they are kind of at the intersection of the two, right? So, depending on the outcome, like I mentioned, the Latino community has a higher prevalence of diabetes, but the Black African American community has a higher prevalence of obesity. And so when you're talking about the Afro-Latino community, they're kind of at the intersection of both. And, I've seen the literature, and the Afro-Latino community is definitely lagging behind. And so I think we do need to take into account how to target interventions for that group specifically.
Awesome. Well, one of my last questions to you, Dr. Vazquez, research shows that there is a great need for more social workers with a Hispanic and Latino background, especially with those who speak Spanish fluently, kind of what we were discussing earlier. What advice would you give to a Hispanic or Latino individual considering social work, or for those not even aware of all the things they can do with a social work degree?
Yeah, I love that. And I'll touch on the second part first. Yeah, I don't think a lot of people realize, especially just with a master's in social work, I don't think people realize how much you can do with that, and how versatile it is. And so just anybody out there that's thinking about social work, I'd really have them take a look at a master's in social work and realize that you can, people that have an MSW are basically in every area of the workforce now, really. And and specifically for the Latinos thinking about social work, there's, I think, almost every job posting that I've seen in the last couple, 2-3 years, it always says, preferred if you can speak Spanish. That's just an easy edge that you have over the competition by being able to speak Spanish. But yeah, no, I think there's definitely a need 100% for those. As the Latino population grows, I think we're the second racial group in the country right now, and it's continuing to grow. There's going to continue to be a need for Spanish-speaking social workers. And as I just mentioned, I think everybody's recognizing that, and it's showing in the job postings.
I know there's a good school in Arlington, University of Texas at Arlington, with a great, MSW program. I might have to go check them out.
Yeah, no, University of Texas at Arlington is the first or second largest social work program in the country. Our faculty are just getting so much stronger in research and teaching. I was so impressed when I was doing my on the job market last year, and I've been impressed with everything that the other faculty, the leadership, since I've been here just in 1 month. And so, yeah, even the students, I've been teaching research methods at the master's level, and they have impressed me with their thinking and not even just what they do in the classroom. I mean, I think most, if not all of my students are, working full time, have a family, they're going to school at night. I mean, that's just, they're going above and beyond what can be asked of them. So yeah, if you're looking for a good top social work program, definitely come to University of Texas at Arlington.
I like that answer, Dr. Vazquez. Dr. Vazquez, do you have any final comments?
No, I just want to thank you for having me. As we've been talking about, the Hispanic Heritage Month is super important. I'm honored that you asked me to be on here and kind of represent for the month, and yeah, I'm just excited to be continuing this legacy for the Hispanic community.
Awesome. Well, Dr. Vazquez, it has been great to be able to speak with you again. Thank you for joining me today, along with our awesome communications team in the background, making all of this possible. And for all of those watching at home, if you want to learn more about the School of Social Work and what social workers do, please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, turn on those post notifications. You can please go to our website, follow us on all of our social media pages, please. As for always, everyone, please be safe, please be kind to one another, wear your mask, and remember, we're all in this together. My name is Douglas Gutierrez. You all have a good one.